first of all, just thank you so much for calling in. I've been so excited for this.
I've been excited too. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So my first question for you is, when did you first know you wanted to be an actor?
That's a great question. I know, just with the circumstances that brings us together, chatting, and all of the people listening, they might actually find this very interesting. So when I was a little kid, my dad had all of these old coaching materials. He used to coach high school basketball and football and stuff like that. And so he really wanted me to play sports. So when I was a little kid, I signed up for all these sports and I liked it okay. But I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So since I was 6, I've been chronically ill. And obviously, sometimes chronic illnesses are very intense and very difficult. And I've had my fair share of that. But it was actually because of my chronic illness that I got into acting. A lot of kids can make it work with their bodies being diabetics and being athletes at the same time. For whatever reason, I just really struggled with that as a young kid. And so I begged my parents to take me out of all of the sports that I was doing. And of course, they were happy to oblige. But their condition was, well, if we're gonna pull you out of all these activities, we should probably find you a different activity. And so that is how I ended up stumbling into theater. I did my first show when I was 7.5, 8, somewhere in there, and I have been acting ever since.
Oh, cool. So who or what inspired you to become a musician?
I think that, my grandmother used to play in a band. It was her and 2 other women, and they played ukulele and sang, kind of like a folk band. My grandfather was in a choir. My dad was in a choir, and my sister, who's a little bit older than me, also does theater and has a beautiful voice and sang. And so I was always surrounded by music. My dad also took drumming lessons as well. So I think when I was in 6th grade, I made my dad buy me a drum kit so that he could teach me how to play the drums. But I've always been fascinated with music. I love the sort of synthesis between pop and jazz. I love like Jamie Cullum and Michael Bublé and people like that. And of course also Harry Connick Jr., which also kind of spreads into the musical theater realm of things. And of course I've been listening to musical theater my whole life. So I think between just the songs I was listening to, the fact that I was active in the musical theater community in my small town in Minnesota, and just the influences I had with friends and family, I had a lot of links to music. And because of those resources that I had available to me, it just seemed like a good fit. Once I started playing the drums, I just became obsessed with not only singing, but also making music, writing songs. I started playing guitar. Obviously, my grandma, like I said, with her playing ukulele, she gave me a ukulele in like 2nd grade. So I learned how to play that, and the bass and, piano and all those types of things. And once I kind of got more into those types of things, I was just hooked. And I've continued to make music, and I absolutely love making music.
Oh, cool. I know that you've been in several Broadway musicals, Broadway and off Broadway. What is your favorite part of musical theater?
That's a great question. I have 2. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. So on my side of things, behind the scenes, I love theater because of how much of a quote unquote team sport it is. You sometimes, and I love doing television and film too, but sometimes when you show up to a television set or a film set, you just kind of show up, you do your thing, you leave. A bunch of stuff is sort of happening around you and to you, but you don't really get to know anybody. And I'm a really social person. I love making friends and I love meeting new people. And in theater, why it's sort of impossible not to get really close because of, you know, the rehearsal process, the tech process, doing 8 shows a week over and over again. It is everyone from costumer to crew member to cast member. Everyone is so intertwined, and all of the work that we all do is so inextricably linked. When you're watching a show and you see, you know, where each cast member goes and the specific choreography and the specific lines that happen, the way that that's charted out on stage is obviously very specific. But for all of those patterns you see happening on stage, there are 2 to 3 times more patterns happening behind the stage, off stage, behind the scenes. And all that kind of vocabulary and rhythm, it takes a very special kind of bond between every single person who's working on it. And I, as a social person, I love that. That makes me really happy. Off of, you know, just me and what happens behind the scenes, I think one of the most special things about doing musical theater is the audience. You know, to get laughter or to get tears or to get gasps or whatever it is in real time, then to be able to go out to the stage door and meet them and ask them how they felt. You know, I have so many memories flooding into my mind about meeting people at the stage door after they've watched a show and it's someone's first Broadway show ever, or maybe it's their birthday, or, you know, if I was doing Heathers, for example, they really loved the movie. And so they came to the musical because they loved the movie. Just hearing people's stories and getting that instant feedback. Whereas if I'm shooting a movie, you know, maybe I shoot it in February, it comes out in October, then I start hearing from people on Twitter, Instagram in November. You know, there's such a separation between the work that I did and the impact it has. With theater, it's instantaneous, and that is really infectious to me. Again, because I feel like for a brief moment, we've all become close friends in the magic of theater, and that brings such a big smile to my face.
Yeah. So what's your favorite Broadway musical?
Oh, man. You know, when I was in high school, I listened to Spring Awakening all the time. I mean, it was like all I ever listened to. I just absolutely loved that album. So, but at the same time, before I was in high school, all I listened to was Wicked. So the fact that I was in Wicked was like so exciting for me. I still can't believe that happened. Since I was able to do it, though, I feel like it's almost biased for me to say Wicked is my favorite musical. So I think I'm going to go with Spring Awakening. But, you know, Wicked, Rent, Hamilton, there are so many musicals that have such a special place in my heart that I've listened to so many times. I'm such a fan of musical theater.
Yeah, actually over quarantine, I've always liked Broadway, but over quarantine, it gave me a chance to just discover all these new soundtracks and just become obsessed with Broadway. And Spring Awakening is also my favorite musical. I'm just obsessed with it.
That's so awesome. Oh my gosh, what a coincidence. That's great. Well, you have good tastes, or maybe I do.
Thank you. Yeah. I like, since I found it, like right when quarantine started, and then I had it on, I found it then, and then I had it like on a loop for months, and I drove both my mom and my sister a little bit crazy with that. Like, they both like Broadway too, but it was on all the time, and so I drove them crazy.
We have that in common. I think I've driven some members of my family crazy with my obsession as well. So we have that in common. That's very funny.
Yeah. So I love your music, and and my mom and my sister and I actually saw you several years ago when you came to Denver.
Amazing.
And Yeah, and my sister and I were right up front, and I remember like you kept waving at me.
That sounds like me.
um, yeah, and so I was wondering, what is your songwriting process like?
I honestly, I don't know if I have an answer for that, or I guess my answer would be I don't know if I have like a definitive process, but I can kind of clue you into like a couple of my strategies. I'm a music producer. I'm actually, the computer screen. So like where you are like sort of sitting in my studio. So here in my desk, I have all my speakers and my hardware and everything that it takes to produce a song. And a lot of the times, if I'm just kind of feeling bored and just want to get some work done and don't really know where I'm going, I'll just kind of sit down and make a track. No idea in my head about like where I want the song to go or what I want it to sound like. I'll just kind of put a bunch of sounds together and make a beat and kind of see if I like it. And if I don't, that's fine. And if I do, then maybe I can use that as inspiration and write to it. A lot of the times, however, and this is, if we have any aspiring artists listening right now, this is just like some great advice that someone told me once. Often the world speaks to us in lyrics. And so I have a note on my notes app on my phone of just things that I've heard, conversations I've been in where someone has said something in a specific way, or someone described a feeling that I've felt that I thought was really interesting, and I'll just write it down. And so I have probably at this point hundreds of just little blurbs that could be ideas for lyrics themselves, titles of songs. And so if I'm looking to start something that's a little bit less random, if I make a track first and I just write to it, that's kind of random. I'm just kind of going off what I feel. And sometimes that's amazing, just writing off of impulse. But sometimes you kind of need something to go off of, and literally just listening during my life to conversations people have with me, things that I hear on the street even. One time I remember I was shooting a movie in Vancouver, and I was walking down the street, and there was like a street busker who was playing these chords. I don't actually think he was performing yet. I think he was like tuning his guitar. But I loved the chords, and so I quickly just pressed record and listened to them. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe those chords ended up becoming a song that I released in 2016 called When You Went Away. But, it's just one of those things where like a lot of writing music is listening first, listening to the world, listening to other music. I definitely get inspiration from other artists and other types of music that are being made right now that I can sort of be like, oh, that's cool. Like, if I put the Ryan McCartan spin on this, how would that sound? So, I'm very experimentational, and I'm very flexible. Wherever, inspiration and information comes from, I'm not very picky about that. And if I sit down to write a song, I just kind of let it happen as it happens, whether I'm drawing from inspiration from before or if I'm just creating something randomly just for the heck of it.
Cool. Do you have a favorite song of yours?
Wow. That's so hard. I mean, they all really, everything that I write, like I said, comes from somewhere, even if it's a completely random stroke of inspiration, why it still is coming from somewhere. And I remember the experience of making each song. When I was still with the girl in the Dreamcatcher, the song Monster is really special to me because we wrote it for a movie. And it was one of those things where me and my songwriting team, we wrote it like really fast to try to make a deadline. They ended up rejecting it for the movie. And when we listened to it back, we were like, this song is actually really, really special. And even though the movie said, no, we should release it anyway. And I just personally think that that's some of the best songwriting I've ever done. As an individual artist, my most recent release, Pink and Green, is very special to me because I was literally just like outside in nature and I saw this beautiful green tree with these pink flowers, and the melody and the concept of pink and green just sort of came to me, and that's why I wrote it. There's another song from an EP I released, I think in 2018, called Over It. And there was something really special about that song. There's this big sort of emotional swell at the end of the piece. And when I first produced it and recorded it and listened back to it, it made me cry. And I thought, wow, if I'm feeling this emotional about it, I must be on the right track. So making music is a really personal experience, and sometimes that's scary, and it definitely has scared me sometimes. But for the most part, I find it incredibly freeing and therapeutic. And the fact that there are people, like you, who enjoy my music. I mean, there's something really special happens to me when someone enjoys a performance that I do, or on a television show or in a movie or on stage. But I didn't write that. I just translated it. When someone responds to my music, I mean, they're responding to something that came straight out of my heart. And so that's a really special feeling, and it's incredibly humbling and gratifying.
Cool. Yeah. I actually, I'm not musical. Like, I can't sing, I can't play any instruments, but I do really like writing songs because, like you said, it's very therapeutic. Like, I can't always talk about what I'm feeling and like put it into words, but always on paper I can put it into words, and then I'm like, okay, I feel better now. So
absolutely, I think that's incredibly wise. Yeah, I agree.
Just really fast, going back to Broadway. What is your favorite song from the Spring Awakening soundtrack?
Oh my gosh. How do I pick one? You have asked me a lot of kind of dumbfounding questions. I'm going to open up on my phone. I'm going to open up the songs because I need to like actually look at the list, because I will not forgive myself if I say something that isn't actually my favorite. And as I'm looking at these titles, I'm like, I love every single one of them. I think, oh, you've really put me in a tough spot. I think if I had to pick, I would say Don't Do Sadness, Blue Wind.
Oh, yeah.
That song, especially when I was really in my like edgy high school feels, like that was one of those songs where I listened to it and I was like, no one understands me except Spring Awakening. You know what I mean? But even now, like a little bit more grown, every time I hear that song, there's just something about the lyricism, the sort of emotional height and contrast of where those two characters are as they sing together. But also just sort of the driving melodic nature of sort of the crunchy guitars and the violins underneath it. It's just, as a lover of musical theater, I love the storytelling. And as a lover of music, I think the songcraft is just so expert. That's a song that I could listen to over and over and over again and never get sick of it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, my favorite, I mean, I also love all of them, but I think my favorite is the one that starts with Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When I first saw the musical live, so I'd listened to it for years, and then the tour came through Minneapolis, and I saw the musical live. And that song is really like angsty and edgy.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised because like halfway through it, when they get to the blah, 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 blah part, I started crying. I was just like weeping. And I was not like expecting that emotional response, but there was something about like the release and the angst that everyone on stage was feeling. Again, in my like high school feels of it all, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I feel understood. It was so epic to see it live. I love that song.
Yeah, I that is so cool that you saw it live. I've been crossing my fingers that it will come to Denver again one day so I can go see it. So
that would be epic. I'm crossing my fingers right with you. They need to put that back on tour.
Yeah. Yeah, I will find any excuse to talk about Spring Awakening. So.
I love that, me too.
I actually bought like custom Broadway picture with like all my favorite Broadway shows on it, and right at the top is Spring Awakening.
That's very cool. I love
that. Of all the roles you've played, is there one that you've related to the most?
You know, I actually think it's apropos to your background right now. I think Brad, obviously like that the Rocky Horror Picture Show is very kitschy and it's very stylized and it's very, there are elements of it that are very of its time. But the thing that I loved about playing Brad and the thing that I loved about our sort of reimagining of the Rocky Horror Picture Show was the idea of, exploring yourself and figuring yourself out. I think that in the original, and this is not a criticism, it's only an observation. In the original piece, it sort of feels like because it's such a hat tip to traditional B horror films, it feels like that movie sort of ends. This is what happened and now it's over. And it was really important to us in our reimagining of it for ours not to end. That maybe these characters had a lot of questions but didn't get a lot of answers. And I found that for my own humanity to be very comforting, but in having conversations with viewers and people who watched the piece, they found that very comforting too, that our version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show sort of left some things unanswered and said that was okay, that all of us are works in progress, no matter what you're talking about, whether it's your opinions or your worldview or any of those types of things, that we're works in progress. We're allowed to change. We're allowed to grow. We're allowed to ask questions, and we're allowed to not know. We're allowed to not know what's going to happen or how we feel about things. And especially at that point in my life, being able to play a role that was asking more questions than he had answers to was very therapeutic for me. I really believe in what that movie is in the lore of the Rocky Horror Picture Show all the way back to the 70s, and in my performance in it, I'm just really proud of it. And I had the time of my life filming it as well. Like, all of those people are dear friends of mine still, and so that helps too. That just the on-set experience was so positive.
Oh, cool. I just have a few more questions for you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us anything about your upcoming projects?
So I'm on the verge right now of potentially doing the 50th anniversary of Hair, the musical Hair. They're doing the 50th anniversary with one of the original producers here in Los Angeles, actually, which is really exciting because usually when I do theater, I have to leave home. But it looks like I might be able to do a really cool piece of theater right here in LA, which is really exciting to me. I continue to make music in my free time, and I'm definitely planning on releasing more. I can't tell you when yet because I don't know. But that train keeps moving along. And, my girlfriend Samantha and I have a YouTube channel, and we continue to make content for that. And I have a Twitch stream that I continue to do, when I make music on the stream, and I chat with my fans on the stream, and I play video games on the stream, which I love to do. So sort of a continuation of some of these new digital projects that I started during the sort of initial wave of the pandemic, and then my music, which will always continue to come out, and then this new production of Hair here in Los Angeles that I think I start rehearsals for in November.
Oh, cool. So if you had to pick one song to wake up to every morning, what song would it be?
Either Fly Me to the Moon, Frank Sinatra, or She Will Be Loved, Maroon 5. Songs About Jane is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, so what is the best piece of advice you've gotten?
Oh, man. I've been really privileged to know a lot of really cool people who have a lot of really good advice. And I'm always asking that same question. Like when I met like Kenny Ortega or Ben Vereen or, Laverne, a lot of people who worked on the Rocky Horror Picture Show, like, teach me your wisdom. Like, what's it like being you? Ben Vereen actually said to us at one point, there are many roads up the mountain, but there's only one mountaintop. And I liked that advice because I think in life we can get caught up in, how am I going to do this? Which direction should I take? And instead of getting stuck on the how of it all, just remembering what it is that you want. That if that's the mountaintop, whether your path is straight and narrow or, windy and curvy, you're making progress and you're getting there. And as an actor, as a diabetic, as a human being, I have found that advice to be incredibly profound, because whether I'm stumbling or whether I'm sprinting, I can always remind myself I'm making progress to that summit. And that's something that I think about probably on a daily basis.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So what is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve is when people say, I could care less. Because it's, I couldn't care less. And that just drives me, because so many people say, literally in Beyonce's Single Ladies, she goes, I could care less what you think. And it's like, Queen Bee, it's couldn't. I couldn't care less. If you could care less, that means you care. If you couldn't care less, that means you don't care at all. And so many people use that expression wrong, and I don't know why, but it drives me insane.
That is probably gonna now drive me insane too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that's my new pet peeve, because I never realized how much it bugged me, and now you talking about it.
Oh no. Well, the trickle down pet peeve. I'm sorry to have burdened you with that.
Oh, it's okay. I have many pet peeves, so now this is just adding to it. So
what's one of your big ones? We can trade.
Okay. I don't like people, like the sound of people chewing or like clearing their throat.
Absolutely. Especially like when people chew with their mouth open.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
I get that one.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So we're getting each other.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. um, what is your favorite show right now?
Oh man. I really like Only Murders in the Building with Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez. I saw an interview with Steve Martin and Martin Short on Bill Maher's show. And if I'm completely honest, when I heard them talking, I was like, what? Like, these two old geezers are doing a show with Selena Gomez about like a murder mystery? Like, what is this? And I watched it, and Samantha, my girlfriend, and I watched it together, and we were like, this actually really works. Like, it's really funny. I think Selena Gomez is great in it. She adopts this like really dry sort of like millennial sort of take on it that I just think really plays off of Steve Martin and Martin Short really well. I think Martin Short especially is fantastic in the show. And I love mysteries, but sometimes mysteries can get really dark, really heavy, or really confusing. And I find the pace of it, considering that it's with two of the most comedic geniuses ever, I find like the pace of it and the tone of it still very light and very enjoyable. I think it's fantastic. I can't wait to watch more.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my whole family and I really wanted to see it, but we don't have Hulu. So we were like, okay, we're thinking about getting it so we could watch the show.
Hulu has a lot of good stuff. A close second for me is RuPaul's Drag Race. Sam and I have been watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race too, and that's also on Hulu. So we're glad that we had Hulu for that. I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, we were deciding between that and Apple TV, and we decided Hulu seemed too overwhelming.
True. I mean, they're all overwhelming these days. Yeah. I mean, you look through those menus and it's like, okay, cool. You have just infinite content. I'll never get to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of overwhelmed with all the streaming services. So
couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So, what is your go-to movie when you want to be comforted?
The Devil Wears Prada. I love that movie. I think Meryl Streep is fantastic in it. I love Anne Hathaway. I love Stanley Tucci. I love Emily Blunt. It's funny. It has some heart. Meryl Streep is there, which is just good for me always. That's one of my favorite movies ever.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I love that movie. So
it's great. It's great.
Yeah, it is. I think just speaking of Meryl Streep, I love her movie, The Prom. That is probably one of my go-to movies.
Love that.
So I've watched that so many times since it came out. So
I love that. That's awesome. And a musical too, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. I'm obsessed with all these movies too that are musicals, and it's gotten to the point that I just really want life to be a musical.
Wouldn't it be amazing if you could just like, if there was just you were really excited, you were really sad, and you could just be like, wait, and just sing about it. Just let it all out. Have some background dancers.
Yeah.
I wish life was a musical. Yeah. Honestly, sometimes I just sing my feelings anyway, and my friends are like, what are you doing? Like, what do you expect? I do theater. Just let me live my musical theater fantasy right now.
Yeah. Yes, I've also told my mom and my sister that then if life was a musical, then I could I'd magically be able to sing.
Exactly. Everyone wins.
Yeah. Yeah. So my last question for you is, who do you consider to be a real life superhero and why?
Wow. I mean, there are so many who come to mind. I always think of people who seemingly do the impossible. I mean, on one hand, like personally, I think of my sister, who's personally overcome so many things. I have a baby cousin with NF who has, overcome so many things. I mean, he's not a baby anymore. He's like in his teens now, but then all the way up the spectrum to, I mean, the woman behind you in the background, Laverne Cox. I mean, someone who, to be the most, arguably one of the most famous trans women in the world, comes with a lot of baggage, and she finds herself in a position where she has to represent an entire community, whether she likes it or not. That feels superhero to me. She's not only a survivor, but she's also a thriver, and that makes me think of someone like, Barack Obama too, first Black president of the United States. That's a survivor and a thriver. Someone who can turn tribulation into triumph. I'm sure pretty much everyone listening to this right now is a survivor and a thriver. That those types of people always come to mind for me, because not only do they provide such an incredible example, but I think they pave the way for other people who are maybe trying to survive something in the silence of their hearts and minds and trying to thrive themselves, to see an example of someone capable of doing that, whether it's in the public eye or like I said before, whether it's a sister or a cousin or a family member or a friend, seeing that example, I think that perseverance spreads and empowers other people to do the same. So I gave you like a billion answers, but I think there are a lot of them, and I think that's great.
Yeah, cool. You had mentioned Laverne Cox, and I'm just slightly obsessed with her in the non-creepy way. I think I always feel like I have to say that.
Right, the little disclaimer.
Yeah, like I promise I'm not crazy. Only the good kind.
Only the good kind. That's right. Yeah. I'm good crazy for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for calling in. I just had the best time talking to you.
It was my total pleasure. I enjoyed every second of it.
Me too.
Thank you so much for spending so much time with us. And just know that if you're ever in Colorado, you have an open invitation to come visit the Seacrest studio and meet the patients and families here.
I will take you up on that.
All right. Have a good day. And I know Maya will keep us updated on all of your whereabouts and where to find you in non-creepy ways.
Yeah.
I love it. What a great way to end it. Thank you all so much. Much love to all of you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.